echo going on today, but my two black labs can really snore up a storm. So I have to worry about background noise, but we're thrilled to be here. You know, as every week evolves, and I can't believe it's been a week since I was with you last. It's amazing how much changes. You know, we're extending well into April now, probably with a very similar work schedule that we've got. I'm quickly realizing all the things that I need to improve in my own work day. It's very easy for me to overwork, under exercise, and overeat. And I am now in a location where that's all happening, really obviously, because I'm not even walking back and forth to a car or walking around the office to talk to people. So it's a challenge. And I think Fred and the team are going to be able to really give some great ideas today about what to be working on. We've been super busy, for those of you who may have heard us earlier, just walking through what are the things that businesses and, quite frankly, even residential consumers need to know about how banks are interpreting and helping people move forward with some of the programmatic support that's been given. Consumer lending is much more regulated, so it's very defined. And I would say for anybody, if you feel like you need to talk to someone at your bank about helping you with a mortgage or a consumer loan or something like that, or the need for a short-term consumer loan, please just pick up the phone and call them. For the business piece, there's a lot more to sort through. The government has come out with the CARES Act, but it's still currently undefined in terms of the execution process. So we've kind of got to hurry up, wait a little bit, and it's causing a lot of frustration. I know we, and I'm sure the other banks, continue to work on trying to figure out how we get the most simplified information to our team members, but also to the small businesses on the Cape, to help guide you through a matrix that says, this is the best thing for you, this is the best thing for you. I think regardless of whether those programs are defined yet, pick up the phone and call your banker. It's better for you to be in conversation with your banker immediately, just to say, hey, let's start teeing this up. Here's where I am. I may have 2 weeks of cash flow. I may need something going forward. What should I be thinking about? What do we know so far? Just have the conversation. Banks are not looking to go through this and stymie businesses from staying open, stymieing businesses from getting through this. As our tagline is now saying at the Coop, we're all in this together. So as banks, we're looking to help clients, and we'll continue to do so. And then in the community, we've spent a lot of time this week, actually yesterday already, talking about the commitments we've already made to organizations, CCYP being one of them, and the Shape the Cape Summit, which we were a big sponsor for. All right, keep our money. We love it. We want to help you. Let's just figure out how else I can be involved and provide some information and support. So we'll be coming out with more of announcements soon. A lot, I think, of the additional donations we can make are going to go to some of the funds that are already established to really help get money into the community, and done in a way where it's readily able to be executed against, versus us trying to add yet another layer into the system. We're going to just give it to the funds that can really be out there and help. So we're super excited about that. I think as a Cape community, and I can tell you even from clients that I'm dealing with, what started out as a lot of fear and panic, not that it's gone away, it's begun to soften a bit, and I see people reacting in a wonderful, how can we help each other, patience, I understand where you're coming from, let's get through this, let's talk. Maybe our best case emotions are now starting to come out, which is really powerful. So again, a bit of a shift. I don't know when the end of this will be, but I think we'll be a better Cape Cod. I think we'll be a better nation in many ways on the flip side. So we're here to support you guys. Lauren and I are talking about maybe putting something together that can really help define what programs are available out there. So more to come when it gets better defined. But I'm thrilled to be here with you this morning, and have fun with Fred. He's going to be great in terms of giving good ideas. I'm realizing at the bank we need to do some work on conference call protocol. Like 10 people talking at once is not really an effective way to have a conference call. Anyway, have fun today, and I'll see you again next week.
Thank you so much, Lisa. We really appreciate it.
No problem.
And
thanks, Lauren.
of our sponsors like Lisa and the cooperative bank, we could not be doing such a quick change as we've done to try to continue to meet the needs of our community through CCYP's mission to connect, engage, advance our young workers. There's so many moving parts, so much going on right now. And our nonprofit sector, nonprofit organizations like CCYP be nowhere without our supporters like the Coop. So thank you again for everything.
Thanks, Lauren.
So we are gonna switch gears and turn it over to Fred now to give us the lowdown on everything we need to know. Before we do that, I wanna just do a couple quick housekeeping. I'm sure you all are now getting very intimately familiar with Zoom. We have a group chat option. So if you have questions, feel free to submit them there. We also, though, want to have this be a pretty informal, casual sort of back and forth. I think Fred, from talking with him, maybe we want more of a conversational feel to this session. So I think, feel free to chime in if you have questions, if you want to, ask something specific, share a specific challenge that you're encountering with working remotely. Let's have a discussion about it, and I will turn it over to Fred now. Thanks, Fred.
Thank you, and I kind of had to chuckle because I heard you say, we have all these great speakers lined up, and then I was waiting for you to say, and then we have Fred.
No.
I don't profess to have, obviously there's no silver bullet with any of this stuff, and there's so many different approaches, and so many, I think so much of it depends on the nature of the organization and what the business goals are. I was speaking with Lauren yesterday. I've kind of been watching this whole coronavirus thing actually since the new year, and I was the crazy guy who was kicking and screaming saying that this is going to be big, and if I had still been day trading, I could have done really well. But I think it's fascinating on a number of levels, and I think one of those levels is, beyond the obvious, public health and everyone's safety and everything else. This is going to lead to a lot of significant changes in our society. And I think having basically everyone forced to work from home, and having corporations, businesses large and small, have to learn how to manage employees and still be productive, but have people not be within physical offices together, is going to lead to a lot of interesting changes. I personally wouldn't be at all be surprised if a lot of businesses come out of this and realize, maybe we don't need to have so many people commute and work together, in small offices every day, and it may well lead to some changes, and we'll see. I also think that for every single individual business, this is a great opportunity to play with some stuff. Obviously it's born of necessity in this case, in terms of having to figure out how to continue to be productive and effectively communicate and manage documents and information and everything else. But I think it's a great opportunity even for businesses that aren't going to make big changes in terms of how people work in a distributed manner. I think it's going to help them, hopefully come up with some better ways to work more optimally. And so I have a little presentation I put together. Again, there's nothing crazy and groundbreaking, and I don't profess to have any divine insight, but just to give you a little bit of a background. So my wife, Lindsay, and I own Chatham Works. It's a combination fitness center, co-working space, and retail shop in North Chatham. We probably got one of the larger SBA loans on the Cape last year, basically. We've pretty much poured our life savings into this. We're very focused on building a year-round business. On the fitness side, there's been a lot of changes to the fitness industry, some of which you don't really see on the Cape, especially on this part of the Cape. We're fortunate in that we have a beautiful building, awesome staff, and I think that we've created an atmosphere and sort of a culture that's a supportive place that, people feel comfortable in. The co-working side of our business, we're definitely, most of you are probably more familiar with Cape Space. We're smaller than Cape Space. We're sort of lower Cape sized, right? So we have about nine small private offices, of which 8 are currently rented, although not occupied at present, other than me here in this one. And then we have open seating. So the open seating isn't really taken off quite as much, but our whole mantra is that we're focused on the year-round market. People who come down from cities understand co-working, and they're a lot more familiar with it than I think a lot of folks on the Cape are. But I think another interesting thing that might come out of this too is you may see more people being like, I'm done with the city and I can make it work in a place like the Cape. And So it's going to be very interesting to see how this ends up affecting the Cape market. So I started my career, my first job out of college was in corporate aircraft brokerage, working for a relative, basically selling private jets, which was pretty interesting and kind of slimy, and happy to no longer be in that. After that, I went to Babson and got my MBA in entrepreneurship and graduated in 2000 at the height of the tech bubble. Swore I'd never worked for a technology company. Went to work for a technology company, a startup started by a bunch of former EMC guys who managed to blow through about 160 million in venture capital in 2.5 years, which was pretty fast and a lot of money back then. So it was a company that did fiber optic networking. After that, I went to work for a company called Zoom Info, which is sort of an online people research tool and in inside sales, and found a niche for them selling into the investment research market. So selling to hedge funds, mutual funds, private equity, venture capital, et cetera, people who would use the tool to find people that had unique perspective on businesses and other things, and that they could incorporate into their research process. And then I went to work for a little investment research firm doing a whole bunch of that stuff. So fast forward, here I am on the Cape, been here for a few years. My wife grew up here. I'm a total wash ashore, but at any rate, I've worked in a bunch of, different kinds of organizations and have played around with a bunch of these sorts of different tools. So I have some perspective, but just to be clear, by no means whatsoever do I begin to think that my perspective is, hold on 2 seconds. All right. You guys can all see that screen now, I hope. Anyone? Bueller? Can somebody give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen?
We can see it.
All right, great. Thank you. Sorry. So basically just a quick agenda, kind of rules of the road, goals and frameworks, essential tools, maximizing productivity and maintaining sanity. And again, this is a unique opportunity for all of us to reassess and improve workflow and communication, right? And I think one sort of constant thread you'll see through this is the human angle. And at the end of the day, technology is great, but if technology isn't being adopted and eagerly adopted, then it's not working. So in terms of, how you look at it, right? And just kind of as people look at different tools that they may want to use and stuff, I think obviously you have to kind of think about it through the framework of, what's the profile of the organization? What are the dynamics that we need to kind of work around? Is our organization centralized and hierarchical? In other words, is it a big corporate, entity where basically corporate IT is probably going to determine everything, in which case the individual may not have too much ability to make decisions and just kind of has to roll with the flow? Or are you a smaller organization and flat and you can make individual decisions and probably try to do so by incorporating, opinion and feedback from end users, because obviously end users are critical. And, if you do have to deal with the corporate IT situation, and also particularly if you're, for example, in financial services and everything has to be properly archived and everything else, and, that creates a whole nother layer of complexity and having to go through VPNs and all sorts of joy. And, I know a lot of people don't have to deal with it, but some of them do, and that's tricky. So obviously, again, just as you think about this, that's kind of an important start in terms of, trying to make tools or decisions rather on tools, et cetera. Whoopsie daisy. Whoops, sorry. In terms of workspace, right? I mean, obviously it's best efforts, and, if you have family, establish ground rules the best you can. Right now I have the great fortune of I'm sitting in a co-working space by myself. I have a beautiful gym downstairs completely to myself, although I've promised our members that I'm not going to use the gym until they can. But I have the ability to get away. A lot of people are kind of stuck at home, right? And if you are, and when I am at home, I mean, you have to do your best to try to establish ground rules. Clearly communicate when you need extra quiet, et cetera. Pretty obvious, right? And then I think another really important thing here is just to try to establish a schedule as best you can. Break up your day into reasonable parts that would typically flow based on a normal day, or if you have to work around other family things with kids doing online learning and whatever, do your best at that. I think trying not to eat at your desk is really important, just to try to have a little bit of separation, right? I think one certainly essential tool is good microphones, especially again, if you know, you have family in the house. You know, being able to put on a good pair of headphones and just basically, you know, listen to music or zone out or, you know, really focus and not have all the distractions is super important. And then obviously, of course, if you're going to be doing a lot of Zoom meetings and things like that, certainly that's very important as well. You know, the cloud in this case is a godsend, right? Imagine if this had happened 15 years ago before most information had moved to the cloud, and you have people having to, you know, log into, you know, servers and all of that stuff. And so, I mean, we're kind of fortunate in many respects in terms of the timing here, right? And obviously, of course, it wasn't too long ago we didn't have all these great tools for visual communication, video, et cetera. You know, at the end of the day, there's a million different tools here. You know, we love Google Suite. You can do Office 365. There's a bunch of other great resources. Messaging, you know, it's interesting that many of these tools have sort of come out of the software development world and then been embraced by sort of more traditional business. And Slack is certainly one of those, right? But there's other things that do similar stuff. Google Hangouts, Microsoft Teams. We use something called Crew, which is a very light and pretty simple messaging app. It allows us to break our employees into different groups and stuff like that. And we can do some file transfer stuff, but it doesn't have all the crazy features that Slack has. You know, I think sometimes with technology, and obviously, again, depending on who your constituent or user base is, sometimes when there's a million features in there, people just kind of get overwhelmed. So very frequently, simple can be much better, right? And then obviously Messenger is huge too. I'm personally very grateful to have moved to Mac from Windows a little while ago, and now I can get messages concurrently on my phone and on my computer, and it just, that kind of simplifies a lot of things too. But at the end of the day, you know, in terms of managing teams, obviously you have to unify and standardize, right? And that may sometimes entail having to tell some people that we're not necessarily going to use your favorite tool. But you know, obviously it's really important to get everybody on the same page. And in this case, that literally means getting everybody using the same piece of software. Similarly, in terms of task and project management tools, right? There's a million things out there. Trello is a nice simple one. Evernote does a heck of a lot more. Obviously, you know, a bunch of these things can get to be pretty expensive, right? ClickUp is an interesting example. That's one that we use that, again, sort of came out of more of the software development world. I love it. It's super powerful. There's so many different things you can do with it. I couldn't get anybody else to use it. So I just had to basically abandon it and say, you know what, it's not worth it. And you can't necessarily have a sacred cow in terms of, you know, this is the greatest thing in the world, because if other people just aren't going to want to embrace it, then there's a point at which you kind of need to fish or cut bait, I guess. So I think just a key takeaway here is adoption and usability, I think ultimately are far more important than having all sorts of super cool features, right? I think another interesting thing here is thinking just within the context of what's the goal, right? Is the goal simply to manage through this pandemic? Or is the goal to try to incorporate something that longer term is going to improve our organization's ability to communicate and be productive and efficient? And again, so I think for that reason, this is a great opportunity for a lot of places to maybe even play around with some of this stuff and maybe try a few different things and see what works, especially if you have a smaller organization. And then also another thing to think about here too is, you know, if you have the time, so many of these platforms are all offering everything for free right now. And sometimes advanced features that you can try for free. So it's a great time to get in there and play around with some stuff. Encourage your employees or coworkers to do the same and you know, trade notes and kind of, you know, maybe make some decisions that will help your business longer term, not just through this crazy time that we're all in right now. In terms of maximizing productivity, again, it's best efforts, ground rules and structure, adoption trumps features and functionality. Sorry to use that word. One thing that we've found is that in terms of video and screen shares, you know, just sometimes doing a screen share with one person can actually be immensely helpful. And frankly, I'm kind of starting to realize that doing a single screen share or a screen share with one or two other people in a meeting, I think can sometimes even be more productive than doing it in person. Because I think you can really make sure everyone's just sitting there staring at their screen and really focused on it. And it seems to me that that's a great way to bang stuff out pretty quickly and just, again, be super task focused and get it done and move on. So that was, that's kind of a surprising takeaway that I've found thus far in this. I think another massively important thing here is that technology is great, right? But it's no substitute for human connection. And right now, that's what we all need most. And it's all what we're missing most, right? So you can have all these great messaging platforms and even video platforms and stuff. But at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and we're all human beings that are going through an extremely stressful time. So I think it's really important to check in with people on a human interpersonal basis and be like, how's it going? How's the family? What do you have going on? Whatever. You never know what somebody else has going on in the background in their personal life or in their household. And we're all crammed like sardines right now, sometimes in some family situations. Right. So I think it's really important to just kind of check in with people and strangely enough, again, I think that in some ways this situation presents an opportunity for us to forge stronger relationships and stronger bonds with people in some cases. So again, just kind of two key takeaways here. Over communicate when you can, right? And obviously don't go overboard, but try to over communicate when you can and keep it human. And then obviously too, maximizing sanity. And we sort of touched on this in the preamble a little bit. Again, it's best efforts. Try to have structure as best you can. For me right now, days of the week have very little significance except for whether or not our kids are doing online learning, because I'm doing these video classes, video fitness classes, and sort of coordinating those 7 days a week. And hopefully I'm going to start to offload some of that onto other employees. But I need a lot more structure myself right now. Getting up and moving is so critically important, right? And obviously if you have an Apple Watch or something else that reminds you to, then that's great, but you just got to do it. Stand up, get out of the chair, go walk around, walk the dog, look at birds, something else. And also too, just because we're all spending so much more time on staring at screens now, you have to rest your eyes by occasionally looking away, focusing on something far away, or we're all gonna go blind. And then, of course, I say this in part because I own a fitness center, but even if I didn't, I would. We all have to exercise and get out and move. And, so many of the benefits of exercise extend far beyond, building muscle or for the sake of building muscle or what you look like in a bathing suit. It's, reducing stress and improving your immune system, sleeping better, all that other good stuff that's especially important at a time like this. So again, I think this really is a unique opportunity for all of us to reassess and try to improve workflow and communication, frankly, both within a business context, but also just within an interpersonal context too. So we should all try to make the most of it. And with that, I'll stop my yakking.
All right. Does anybody want to pipe in and submit a question or maybe talk through anything specific that Fred's mentioned or anything that's not been mentioned? Now's the time to discuss. You can unmute yourself or I can unmute you to force you.
Having forced conversations now, Laura. Forced social interaction.
That was like the two acceptable choices mom thing to say, right? Like either you can do it yourself
or I'll do it for you.
Just kidding.
No, you're not.
What's everybody, what challenges are coming
up? Or what
up?
have you guys found that it's been great?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't.
There you go.
What do I know?
Yeah, that's a good one. What works?
Well, I've personally just tried to get my schedule to be as close to what it was before as possible to maintain some kind of normalcy, but I've had trouble adjusting parts of it to like the work from home life. And frankly, I can't find a good chair in this house. I didn't realize how bad all of my chairs were until like I got stuff in the house. And no one is going to give me a chair right now. Like I've actually thought about going to the office and like wiping down my chair and bringing it home. Like that's how bad.
Our staff basically did that. Everyone went and brought their chairs home because.
Okay, so that is a normal thing.
I stole my chair. I didn't get to bring
Okay.
chair home.
It's important.
No, it's really important. Like I stole my husband's chair one day and he was like, no, give that back.
Try making a standing desk. Make like a hacked standing desk, maybe.
Yeah, actually, that is something I thought about because our counter is just as tall as a standing desk would be.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good call. Yeah.
I have one of the adjustable desks at my home office.
That's good.
I already work from home about half the time anyway, so that was kind of cheating.
Yeah. Anybody who was like 0 work from home time before this?
I pretty much was 0. before.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was 0 work from home, and we have an office, but it's just like turned into like the put everything in the office room. And I think like this week it's gonna force me to clean it because I've been sitting by the door and it's so cold here. So I've decided I need to clean out the office and like make it an actual office because I'm tired of it like freezing sitting by the door.
Yeah. It's challenging when there's not a clear workspace. I was with someone the other day who said they showed me, we were on Zoom and they showed me they had a card table that was set up with their computer and everything. And so it was, a makeshift. And I didn't realize, but we had already set our home office up. So that's a lucky thing. A lot of people are struggling to find an actual space where they can work.
Yeah.
Well, and sharing it now with children is challenging as well.
Maybe a partner or because everybody's at home. Yeah. And the kids have schoolwork potentially that they need the computer for and that sort of thing. Yeah. Definitely a challenge.
What do you guys, are there any other like pieces of software that you've started using now to facilitate communication or just sort of coordination with coworkers that you hadn't used before? And is there anything you found to be particularly helpful, or I'm just curious?
Actually, on the opposite of that, I'm an attorney and we basically just are still texting each other or emailing. And I was wondering, like, because we use Clio, which is the cloud-based stuff for lawyers, but what kind of these programs that you just all went over do you think might like be good for the legal field?
Well, Slack is sort of universally heralded as sort of the killer app and the email killer and everything else. And I know that it has a whole ton of different features and functionality built into it. And frankly, I wish that we were using Slack instead of what we're currently using, which is Crew. Crew's a little bit more set up for like service-based organizations and like restaurants and who's covering my shift and kind of smaller stuff like that. Slack has a whole ton of different integrations with other, cloud platforms and everything else. And I know that they have a whole ton of different levels of service. So, Slack is sort of considered to be like the
Slack's great.
Yeah, we use Slack
block, right?
Marissa,
extensively, and it has like a video chat functionality too, so you can be like chatting with someone and then just call them, and then your video call, chatting with them. You can link in Google Docs. It's really, we used it a lot prior to this, so we were pretty set up in terms of like tools we were using, but it's like now we're like on turbo Slack.
What did it say last week, Marissa? We sent like 8,000 more Slack messages than we did.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we're heavy Slack users.
See, I'm a Slack resistor, and it's because the volume of it makes me uncomfortable. I'm afraid, I'm too like nervous that I'm missing too much. It's
you have to get comfortable with setting do not disturb and snooze.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had to do that a little bit because it's like now that everyone's using it, it's like you can be kind of constantly interrupted. So encouraging people to put in their status if they're away or they're on break or they're focusing, so that people, you know, and so that people don't feel like they need an immediate response.
Yeah, I think that's one of the
Actually, a
big
really
risks.
good point. Yeah.
It's one of the big risks with all of these things, right? Is that, I mean, for example, if someone is sending a message within a group thread that's really only intended for one person, right? And there's 8 other people on the thread, and then people just stop looking at it. And then it's kind of like, all right, well.
You can also set up your alerts to only give you push notifications for certain channels. So I know some people on our team have a lot of like the secondary channels, I would say, snoozed, but the important ones, they have the notification set up for, so it gets pushed through.
I think that's one of the most challenging things that I've actually encountered, and it was before all of this, because we were a remote office before at CCYP, so we were a little bit ahead of the jump. But I think setting those boundaries of when you're working and when you're not becomes especially challenging when you're at home all the time, because even before we were a remote office, but we were doing meetings and that sort of thing, and it's just it's almost this requirement. You mentioned Slack on Turbo, or but I think it's like a heightened need to set good boundaries and determine what your availability is going to be and when you're responding to things, and to still be responsive, but have limits around it for your own sake. Tough, and it's different for everybody. Yeah. Anybody have success with scheduling tools or things that have helped you to find that balance?
No. Yeah, I think we're all just getting used to it. I mean, I actually just got an email during this that I have a laptop ready for work so that I can actually be fully remote. Up until then, I had, email, work email on my phone, but I didn't have access to any of our, because we're a bank, we have so many different firewalls and securities that we can't just do stuff in the cloud. So that'll be really, really nice just from an efficiency point of view. I feel like there's been a lot of things that I've been a little bit crippled on just not having access to certain files. But I also had the kind of like or I shouldn't say all clear, but permission to go into the office like 1 or 2 days a week, just because we have so few people there right now. I think there's like 12 people at the ops center. It's such a big building that we have plenty of space to spread out for social distancing, and the cleaning regimen there has been so strict and so high. So I feel pretty comfortable with that. I'm actually going to go in this afternoon to get a little bit of work done. And I think that will just be helpful to break up the day a little bit. Yesterday was pretty good. I think I had a really good balance between preparing stuff for dinner, had stuff cooking in the kitchen, also on a conference call, and then had stuff going on. Like it felt like kind of more of a normal multitasking kind of, well, as close to normal as you could be. But yeah, I mean, I think that it's just going to take all of us a while to fully adjust and get used to this.
So Christina, now that you're getting a laptop, you're actually going to have to work.
Oh, I've been working.
That actually was a
Greg.
problem of mine as well. So like I've resisted a mobile office for a really long time, and I go into the office on off hours to use my computer office because I am very big on keeping home and work separate.
Me too.
So all I've got at home is my tiny little Microsoft Surface with its dinky little keyboard, which is 5 years old. And so we're back on the problem of no one's going to sell me a laptop right now either. So yeah. So I'm stealing my chair and my computer now. So I'm just going to make out with everything from my office.
Yeah. I have a Mac that I got a couple years ago, which is great. But again, everything we use at the office is PC. So having
that's also a problem of mine.
Yeah. So anyways.
Well, and for those industries with high regulation, or a lot of industries are still extremely reliant on physical paperwork, and it's shocking how much that's the case. And I would expect legal, accounting, you know, a lot of these industries are still, we've had to figure out just internally with our accounting processes, you know, you get a little stilted because you're used to just trading paperwork. And if you're not in the same room with each other, how does that happen? And so I think these things are universal to some extent, but I think that certain industries are probably grappling with it more than others, of how do you take something digital when you're so used to being just physically with whatever the work is that you're doing. And then of course you have privacy issues, even if you're not highly regulated. You know, how are you making sure that information that's personally identifiable, or, you know, you have people's sensitive info, how is that staying secure when people are taking it home with them? So lots of questions there to answer as well, that just differ by industry, by organization, but maybe we'll start to see more guidance and support for that sort of thing moving forward.
Yeah.
What else? Other successes or?
I'll just say, like, I've sort of been enjoying having, I guess, a looser schedule of not being chained to a desk for 8 hours a day, and having kind of the flexibility to, like, I still get started around the same time. Normally I would get to the office around 8:30 or 9. And so I still tend to start, you know, around that same time. Like, I was doing emails in bed at 7 a.m. this morning, but then being able to take a break. And as I said, like yesterday, I, you know, had some, you know, meal prep stuff that I was doing in the middle of the day, and then going outside, like going out for walks has been super, super helpful, and as active as possible, and having the flexibility to choose to do that at 2 in the afternoon if I want to, as long as I don't, you know, have any calls or anything, and know that the work is still going to be there. And if I want to log in and do something at 6 at night, I can. If, you know, I chose to kind of do something earlier in the day, like take a drive down 6A just because I need to get out of my house.
Well, I mean, I think it's fascinating to see how organizations are going to respond, right? I mean, the recent stat I saw, you know, 74% of people who are currently office workers would prefer to work from home if they could. And I think if people are still able to be productive in a decent number of cases, even more productive if they're working from home, and perhaps sometimes doing work more on their own time frame than through, you know, standard 8 to 6 or 9 to 5 or whatever window, right? And if you pull out all that commuting time, I mean, it's going to be really fascinating to see what happens here. And
it requires a certain amount more of efficiency too, because you have less of that, you know, water cooler talk and the interruptions, and more sitting down and just getting it done. But I think it is a big mental barrier in a lot of cases too, because similar to the paper issue, I think that our working world has really continued to be kind of hung up on this working hours, 9 to 5 structure of, you know, you should be working 8 hours a day. And I think, Christina, to your point, you know, kind of giving yourself permission to get outside of that, as long as the work gets done. Take those opportunities to take a break, to get up and walk around, to, you know, be outside, you know, cook yourself something healthy and make sure that you're eating and nourishing yourself when you're at work. And those are opportunities that you wouldn't have otherwise in the office. And so sometimes it feels, I know I've struggled for years with, like, oh, this is technically work time, I should be logging this many hours. And it requires a reset mentally, I think, to go, okay, this isn't how that works. I'm not a butt in a seat for 8 hours a day. I'm trying to get XYZ done. And if I get those things done, then I'm
well, and so much of it's culture, right? And corporate culture and managerial culture, right? And if you have a heavy-handed, super hierarchical, sort of, you know, buttoned up you know, those cultures may prove to be a lot more resistant, but I also think that you may see more businesses be like, hey, you know, we can give some people, you know, these people are adults, and if they're getting their work done, then isn't kind of that all that matters? And, you know, you may see more people gravitate away from heavy-handed organizational cultures. And so it's going to be fascinating to watch.
It requires too, I mean, Fred, I think that's a great point. From a managerial perspective, if you're managing people remotely, it requires a certain level, actually a pretty high level, I would say, of trust.
Absolutely.
So I trust this person is going to get their work done, and that I don't need to be checking in with them nonstop, and that if I need them, they're going to respond, and to not, you know, be so overbearing, I guess, in a way. But I think that it is really tough for some managers to relinquish that control and to trust that people are going to do what they're supposed to do, even if you're not watching them 24.
You can go
or 8 hours a day or whatever.
Go trust but verify, right?
Yeah.
But I also think if you don't trust someone, then why the hell are they on your team to begin with?
That's a great point. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. Is anyone managing people remotely right now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything you found to be effective or
yeah, I mean, I think you know, establishing like regular check-in time. Oh. Were you talking, Craig?
I was saying, yeah, Marissa, anything you found of it?
I mean, I think it's been working pretty well. Like, I have just have established times I check in with my different team members just to make sure, and some of this was already talked about, and a lot of it's just how are you doing, like in general, and then also, you know, what products are you working on? What can I do to help? You know, and then also making sure we're having enough like team meetings with different people on different, like we had a communications meeting this morning, and you know, events meeting. So we're kind of figuring that out, like making sure people are looped in on what they need to be looped in on without like creating too many meetings. But I think it's been going well. What do you think, Craig?
I think it's going pretty well. Granted, I was only ever in the office 2 days a week, so I'm remote anyways. So but yeah, it's going pretty well. I think the hardest thing with all of this is I think just not being able to go anywhere just kind of warps your perception of time. So I find myself sometimes being like, oh, I'm getting nothing done. And it's like, oh, I've actually only been distracted for 7 minutes. It feels like an hour because you can't do anything.
Right. It's a lot easier.
That's why I said, like, sometimes just going for a drive down 6A, like I live right off of 6A, and I have to say I've gotten like a little bit bored with we have amazing trails around here, but I've gotten like a little bit bored with all of them. So I'm like, I'm just going to go down to Brewster and do a trail down there today.
Yeah, get out and see something different.
Yeah.
Count license plates.
Okay. Yeah, exactly.
I followed a Florida home last night.
I'm there.
Great. I was going to need my own services after that.
Oh no. Yeah, no, none of that. Yeah, I think it's managing remotely requires a higher touch, almost like you have to check in more frequently than you would if you were under the same roof together, which seems intuitive, but I think that keeping the same schedule can sometimes be challenging to what you were doing in the office versus now, especially when there's people that you're overseeing or managing. Yeah.
But, it's interesting, right? Because at the same time, it's like, it depends on the nature of the work, right? But if you can set up tools and processes where people can basically be, and I look at, our kids every day for remote learning, they have to submit an exit ticket. Now, granted, the exit ticket, they may fudge on those a little bit here and there, right? But having said that, it is possible to create processes that are leveraging technology that give you some ability to, monitor and verify progress and whatever else. And not that you ever want to have technology completely take away the human aspect of things, but, you could also say too, we get rid of more of these stupid meetings and whatever else that, corporate America is notorious for. And it actually will free people up to have A, more time to work, but then B, more time to actually have real conversations. And those are probably both good things. So.
Awesome. Well, any last observations, comments? reflections, words of encouragement. We can do this.
Yeah. It's good to see everyone.
Yes.
Yes, definitely, definitely. What other, is this helpful? Just this sort of conversational check-in, getting a little bit of FaceTime, social.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I've been setting up me and my family. My dad is in Florida. My brother's in LA, and we've been doing like weekly happy hours.
I
Yeah,
have that with all my family too, but at this
I'm
point I'm
doing it
talking
too.
to them more than I was with all of
Yes.
them.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
after like Zoom meetings every night are getting kind of exhausting.
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, we had 3 on Sunday, like back meetings with the kids' friends and then family. And, but yeah, I don't know, you sort of go, why wasn't I doing this before?
Right.
Spread out all over the country anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We never really thought about it.
Yeah, we got bikes and rode around the neighborhood and kind of like stopped at the end of driveways to check in with friends and stuff, and it was nice to do that.
My parents left a banana bread in the hood of my car last week. That
Aww.
was their way of saying hi.
It is just going to be so weird when people are kind of sort of allowed to congregate again, right?
Yeah.
I'm especially thinking too, like for kids. I mean, like for kids right now, this is so, I don't know, that's a whole separate thing. But
Weird. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very
Uh,
weird.
I feel like it's going to affect the office environment, like you were saying at the beginning of this a lot. Like now that we've established, like I can send in my timesheet and I'm still billing the same from home. So
I can't go back to collared shirts now.
yeah, also, yeah, I am doing that
We're
thing.
gonna have to change the dress code, Marissa.
No pants Fridays or whatever.
okay.
I'm glad this is neck up. Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
so much,
Good to see
everybody.
everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
good to see you all. Appreciate it. Thank you, Fred. We really appreciate the presentation.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
We will be uploading this recording. We'll share it to our YouTube channel. And don't forget, I'm going to share here our next week session. We have a pretty timely topic. It's actually a 2-parter on crisis management for nonprofits and small business. But anybody is welcome to join, so please help us spread the word. We will have Facebook events set up for these. Next week will be focused on crisis communication, and then April 14th will be focused on kind of the legal side of crisis management. And we may get into more of the, retention of employees and, issues with the banking world and sort of all the things that are coming out at the federal level and various other things too. So if you have topic suggestions or ideas for how we can improve this series or add on to it, please reach out and let us know. And then make sure and spread the word about our upcoming sessions.
Lauren, the Children's Place has been doing like live videos, and one thing we were doing was like seeking questions beforehand.
Nice.
I don't know if you want to put that out there, like if there's anything you want Megan next week to address, if people want to submit questions or.
That's a great idea. Yeah, maybe we can put that out ahead of time for those that can't join. They can have an opportunity to submit questions. Yeah.
I also I just shared a link on the chat. This was a webinar that they actually did on Friday, and this is about the new CARES stimulus package. And then it also, so it goes over all the details as a small business or nonprofit, the details of the CARES Act, as well as the SBA emergency injury, whatever that loan is. So there are definitely options if anyone, if you guys want to share it with your networks and just to get some more information on the type of aid that's available. It was really, it's long, but it's really good information. So, I mean, nothing is really, as Lisa was saying earlier, nothing's really released yet, but at least you'll have the information to go from once the applications are open.
Thank you.
And we just added some info on that relief package to our resources page on the CCYP website. So we have a COVID-19 resources page. And if you have other resources that you're aware of that you think we should add to that, please let us know. And anybody else want to share any resources or great webinars or anything that they've participated in lately? I felt that's actually a really helpful thing a lot of times.
The only other thing that I just saw come through, I'm a huge plant fanatic, and Hyannis Country Gardens is doing Zoom meetings every Friday night, I think at maybe 6 or 7, with CF Forney. She's like this amazing gardener. So it's like a cocktails, have your own cocktail and talk about like things you can be doing in your garden this time of year. So if anyone wants a little bit of a break or is like wanting to get out in their yard and play in the dirt, then that's a cool resource as well.
That's just a great point. I have been making a point of trying to listen to non-COVID related podcasts and like TV shows, and I know probably all of us have watched Tiger King at this point, so I'm only 4 episodes in, so don't spoil it for me. But I think that's actually a good point for everyone, is like take a break from reality every now and then. Go figure out.
You wouldn't believe us if we tried to spoil it for you. You wouldn't believe us anyway. So
Yeah.
Definitely finish it.
No, I'm going to. It's on the agenda to do tonight. But like, just even like a podcast about something weird, like sometimes just takes you out of this and like you reset and get back to your day to day.
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Awesome, everybody. Well,
Thank you.
glad to be back here same time next week. Check for the link and share it out to your friends, and thanks again for joining us. We really
Thanks, Lauren.
Fred.
Thanks all. Thanks, Lauren, Megan, and take care, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.